Within seconds, Mr. Phigg, Johanna and Harry's hands were tied firmly behind them with thick, sticky tape. Then a rope was looped through their bonds and around Bartram's neck and secured to a sturdy metal ring in the stable wall. Johanna pulled against the tight tape and wriggled every way she could. The edges of the tape were sharp and dug painfully into her wrists. Ouch! Damn them! Ouch! It was no good. They would not be going anywhere for a while. The security guards tramped back up the stairs. Moments later, 4 sleek black cats slunk into the room and timidly pressed themselves up against the far wall. "Yes, yes, come in, you useless rabble," shouted Darby Ostler as the cats flinched at the sound of his voice. "It's always good to have an audience, even one as contemptible as you." The cats shivered and seemed to be trying to sink into the floor. "There's no need to be so horrible," said Johanna. "Oh, yes, there is," said Mr. Ostler. "That's how I am. And they're scaredy cats. It's their job to show me some respect." "Let's get this straight," said Mr. Phigg. "You keep these poor cats around just so you can enjoy seeing them cringe?" "Oh, they do some housework and a bit of bookkeeping as well, but grovelling is what they're best at, and I do like to have folk grovelling in front of me." He smiled broadly at his captives. "It will be your turn next." "Don't hold your breath," shouted Harry. "We're not scared of you." "Well, you should be. I suggest, little boy, that you pause and reflect on the helplessness of your position. You can't escape, no one knows you're here, and I'm a very unpleasant man. Don't you think a few tears and a little grovelling might be in order?" "Pah!" shouted Harry. "We're not beaten yet, you creep. Just you wait." Ostler paced up and down for a while silently, before stopping in front of Harry. He bent down, put his face right in front of Harry's, and kept it there. "Well, I waited, and nothing happened. I don't think anything's going to happen, do you?" Then he walked up and down for a few moments more, stopping in front of Mr. Phigg. "I expect you were feeling pleased with yourself," he sneered. "Getting in here, working out some of what's going on, even liberating this scrawny excuse for a sheep on the way." He gestured dismissively at Bartram. "Typical. But you needn't have bothered. There'll be a lot more joining him very shortly, I can tell you." Then he leant forward and pulled the camera off Mr. Figg's head. "Let's get rid of that, shall we?" He dropped it on the floor and crushed it under the heel of his boot. "That's better. You're not going to need any souvenirs where you're going. Now, shall I tell you the rest of the story?" "Oh, yes, please, master," chorused the scaredy cats as if on cue. "Please tell us the story." "Shut up, you morons! I'm talking." He turned back to Mr. Phigg and the children. "Yes, I am the leader of the nightmares, and yes, this is the new location of the round stable. But do you know why we are moving here?" "Well, I did hear your old neighbours weren't that keen on you. Was there a petition?" suggested Mr. Phigg. "Imbecile! You've no idea what is happening. The nightmare's power and influence has already been increasing, as I'm sure you've noticed, but that is only the start. Imagine what it will be like when we're here in the grey world all the time." "But you're not going to get away with it," said Johanna. "Oh, really?" "No, it's not just us you have to deal with." Ostler stared at her in mock surprise. Oh dear, I'm terrified. The cavalry are waiting behind the ridge, are they?" He laughed harshly. That pathetic shadow flock, I suppose you mean, your woolly-backed and woolly-minded little friends, lulling people off to their cosy and comfortable slumbers, night after night, and getting nothing back in return. What is the point of that? We hate the shadow flock, don't we? Yes, master, we do, chorused the scaredy cats. We hate them, and we're putting them out of business. That's why the new stable is here, on the downs. Very soon, bed quarters will be mine. Just think how frightening it will be. People lying awake deep into the night, trying to summon their sweet familiar vision of woolly visitors, but nothing comes. Instead, their worst fears are dropped repeatedly into their minds by my black beauties. They'll be terrified, living in a waking nightmare. But why would you want to do that? Asked Johanna. It's cruel. Yes, it is, isn't it? Said Ostler proudly. But there's a practical purpose too. Once you've got people scared, it's very easy to make them do what you want. Isn't it? He roared suddenly, spinning round. Yes, master, said the scaredy cats, quivering. Oh, yes. Ostler's voice was quiet again. I shall be elected mayor of Brashley-on-Sea shortly. A nightmare, you might say. The scaredy cats snickered dutifully. And from there I shall move into national politics. I will be Prime Minister within 5 years. But you don't have a plan B, said Johanna with a strange emphasis. We all need a plan B. What are you talking about? Said Ostler crossly. My plan can't fail. I don't need any alternative. The master knows, you know, sang the scaredy cats, and did a little shuffling dance routine. Once bed quarters is under my control, Ostler continued. But what will happen to the shadow flock? Johanna interrupted anxiously, the memory of the sign on the second factory building above them suddenly sharp in her mind. What are you going to do? Oh, yes, grinned Ostler. I haven't told you the best part of the story yet. The sweetener which clinched the deal with that idiot Mallender, it persuaded him to build his factory farm just here, where I wanted him. What sweetener? A huge supply of free mutton for his new range of traditional country pies. Tender meaty flavour, pure taste with no waste, sang the scaredy cats to the tune of Kenneth Mallander's TV jingle. We're tougher than you think, said Bartram quietly. Ostler leapt in the air and squawked in surprise. It talked! It talked! He hugged himself with pleasure. Oh, this is just too good. I've captured one of them already, and I didn't know it. You monster! Shouted Johanna. Why, thank you, preened Ostler. I do my best. My father always told me that to get on in life, you need to make sure people either like you or are scared of you. And, as the old toad kept saying, there's never been much chance of people liking me. I soon found that out at school, you know. I was only there for a fortnight before I was tied to the top of the bell tower for 6 hours. After that, I focused on fear. Ostler was suddenly conscious that he had lost his audience. The children were staring at Mr. Phigg, and the same thought was chiming in all their brains. Bell tower, said Mr. Phigg. 6 hours. I knew I'd seen you before somewhere. You're Peaky Derbyshire. Has it really taken you this long to work that out, Figgles. You always were on the slow side, weren't you? I never understood why people at school found you so interesting. Peaky? Asked Harry. Yes, said Mr. Phigg. We heard his mother asking one of the monks if he could be excused from games because he was feeling a little peaky, and it sort of stuck. Then we went on a geography trip to the Peak District, and that was that. Never called him anything else afterwards. When did you change your name again then, Peaky? Don't call me that. Ostler seemed apt when I took on the nightmares, so I used that name when I got the job with Brashley Council, and my whole wonderful plan fell perfectly into place. You're so clever, master, said the scaredy cats. Yes, I am, aren't I? Said Ostler proudly. And now it's payback time for has-beens like you, Figgles. Actually, you're more of a never was. Don't you want to know what I've got in store for you and your meddling little friends? I've got a feeling you're going to tell us anyway, said Mr. Phigg. Yes, yes, it's my turn now. People are going to listen to me. We're all ready to start production in the mutton plant, as you will have seen. But that whole assembly line needs a proper testing to make sure that if you feed a feeble, bleating sheep in at one end, you get some nice juicy pies in their proper cardboard boxes coming out at the other. I'm expecting it to work perfectly because I designed it, but we need to be sure. And that's why I got the guards to round up our woolly friend here. But now we can have an even better test. I'm going to feed all 4 of you in at the beginning of the assembly line, and I'll be fascinated to see what comes out at the other end.